Welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and all across the 24/7 Sports Facebook network. Thanks for hanging out. Come on and smash that subscribe and high five that like. And come and join us in the chat because that's where we're hanging out. It is a Thursday. We got a lot to get to. We are going to be taking your live audience questions. And I wanted to address those of you who might not be able to always watch live. Maybe you've got something on the calendar for 11 a.m. Eastern time. Well, one thing that you can do is the show is always live before we get started. You could jump in 15, 30 minutes early. Go ahead and drop a question. Honestly, a better chance we see it then than in the middle of the show when things are firing. We do our best. Producer Jordan does a good chance, but we want to make these shows interactive. We want to make you a part of it. So even if you can't join us live, come jump in at youtube.com/cover3, drop your question, and then come back and watch it later. Good chance that we'll be able to get to it. Already had a couple of those in the chat already. We appreciate you, Brandon. We appreciate you, Robert, and much more. Big news, not necessarily this week, but in the coming weeks as we look at the changes to college football. We'll get to that in just a little bit. Plus, in addition to live audience questions, we're going to dive into the big old bag of mail, taking a look at some potential under-the-radar position battles to keep your eye on in the offseason. And then also a lot of a fan favorite that we always like to cycle back to, the return of the NCAA football game. But, Tom, Bub, want to at least go ahead and get us started with those rule changes that are potentially on the horizon, because the NCAA Football Rules Committee has their annual meeting, and there are 4 proposals that they're going to be considering. So for those who've not been able to get a chance to take a look at it, they are, 1, no longer allowing consecutive timeouts to ice a kicker. Number 2, the idea that there would be an untimed down at the end of the quarter if there is a defensive penalty, that's going to be getting out of the game. Number 3, having the clock continue to run after a first down. This is going to be the big one, and probably what we're going to end up spending a lot of time discussing in terms of its potential impact. The clock being allowed to run after first downs, except in the final 2 minutes of each half. And then the final one, this one's kind of wild, having the clock continue to run after an incomplete pass once the official has spotted the ball. So clearly we are looking, for a lot of different reasons at either how long a game is or how many plays there are in a game. And so I think that that's as good a place to start as any before we look at the potential impact of these rule change proposals. So, Tom, Bud, what stands out about when you're trying to get in the mindset of the motivating factors for this right now?
I think we need to go back to an episode that we did last summer, right? And we had Dennis Dodd on, and Dennis had done some really interesting reporting on some of the data that the NCAA future committee or whatever the committee was that they had assembled to figure out the future of the sport, transformation committee, maybe it was. And Dennis, let's just roll the clips from this summer and here, let's remember what Dennis had told us about this, 'cause I think this is really where it's coming from.
And they're significant. And I thought it was interesting the way you laid it out, because I think this is a critical decision-making process and how it could impact a lot more than just player safety. I mean, it could impact the length of games, so much that goes into it. The story's great, well-researched. What were some of your bigger takeaways that you learned from there, and what direction do you think we're headed?
Well, a couple of things. The people in charge, the stakeholders, the rules committee, the commissioners now have taken this semantic approach to shortening games or protecting players or both. They're calling it exposures now for whatever reason. It used to be snaps, plays.
Oh, it's a COVID thing. Yeah, use exposure. I mean, it's everyone's buzzword now.
So an exposure to me signifies, you're exposing your body to some sort of harm every time, you have a football play. Duh, we know that. But that's what they're calling it. And so by framing it that way, they're making it a health and safety issue. Now, what is less important now these days is length of games. Multiple people that I talked to for this story, and I think a couple of them they're quoted are saying, I'm less worried about the length of game than what happens within the game. That used to be that used to be a thing. But I think what's come back, and I think, Danny, you agree with this, is that the fans don't necessarily care. They care about the commercials, watching on TV, the delay in games between the quarters when they give some bank president a check for $30,000 or something. I think that can be fixed. But what fans love is getting there early, tailgating, staying late, enjoying the day. And that's just become less important. And so the stakeholders now are worried about what happens between the lines. If it shortens a game, it shortens a game. But that's not the number one priority.
They're probably going to make some kind of rule changes, as you noted. It seems like there's an urgency that they're showing now. And I don't want to just come out and say they never cared about player safety before, but in many cases, they just kind of paid lip service to it. And by they, I mean, the NCAA Rules Committee and whatnot. Why now? Why do they all of a sudden care about player safety so much?
It's a liability thing. They won't admit it, and the commissioners I talk, well, that's not really part of it. It's a big part of it. I call it the leaky roof theory. You buy a house, and let's say it has a leaky roof. You tell the owners that before I buy this house, you got to fix the roof. So I think before college football goes forward, particularly college football playoff, in whatever form it goes forward in, has to fix the leaky roof. Not many people know this. Still, there are dozens of head trauma lawsuits going on all over the country, targeting schools, the NCAA, millions and millions of dollars. It's a reason that I wrote a story last fall about how the rules committee is not going backwards on targeting. We hear all this criticism about targeting. What's not going to happen is to make the penalty lighter. And I think the people in charge are particularly against this flagrant 1, flagrant 2, because it is going to delay the game more. But they're not going backwards on enforcement of it because they're worried about liability. What these trial lawyers have become savvy at, all the research is out there. They now can trace, what they call NCAA negligence on head trauma and student athlete welfare back to the 50s, according to them. If you go backwards on targeting, if you don't address this right now, then you're going to end up in court for years and years and years. So as college football moves on, as college football transitions to oversight, I think, by the college football playoff, I think they've got to get this piece of it fixed, whatever fixed means. We don't even know if this is going to work. It looks like it might work, but I know I've talked about it with Danny, that, boy, the first down thing is going to be huge. Mm-hmm. It's what differentiates college football from the pros, and the pros fit nicely into that 3-hour window every Sunday and throughout the week. Does college football want to be that? And in 2006, when they tried to do something similar, it was an absolute disaster. Scoring went down. And I'm talking about, you guys remember this, when they started the clock, inexplicably went toe met leather. That, and they shortened half times, which was fine. I think over time they forgot about the halftime thing. We know that. We go to games. It's as long as it is. But that one thing made games shorter. They dropped down to 64 plays per game. That's an NFL pace. It was the lowest scoring season still since 1991, and they completely changed it the next year. This is a very delicate, these are very delicate rule changes that have to be well thought out.
That was Dennis Dodd. On top of it, again, March last year, forecasting exactly what we are dealing with right here in late February of 2023. The litigation and the liability is certainly a part of this, but as we sit on the precipice of college football playoff expansion and hearing some of the comments that we've had from Greg Sankey and other power brokers, is the acknowledgement that if you're going to extend the season, if you're going to add games, then it's almost like funny accounting. Like, we are trying, this is my read. I'm editorializing here. I think that we are trying to take plays out of the game in order to justify adding games on the end of it. Because Dennis Dodd has a story up on CBSSports.com where he says that experts have indicated that just the first down rule. The clock runs on first downs. Since 1968, the NFL and college have been different in terms of how the clock operates on first downs. If they move to more of an NFL model, obviously with the clock stopping on first downs under 2 minutes, that would be 7 plays per game. 7 plays per game is okay. But if they do the other rule change that is being proposed here, which would be as soon as the official spots the ball, even after an incomplete pass, the clock moves forward, that could be as many as 18 to 20 plays per game impacted here. Clearly, one is less dramatic than the other, but when we're talking about the motivations, I think that the liability and sort of litigation part of this can exist, but as we're looking at what college football future is going to be, I read this as they're doing anything they can, yes, for maybe the TV side, but also to justify what is going to be a 17-game schedule potentially for some teams.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, we care about player safety when we can't make millions and millions and millions of dollars off of it. And that's really what it boils down to, because another way to shorten games would be to remove commercial breaks. But God knows we are never going to remove commercial breaks from broadcasts. And like, you could do the thing where it's, we want to shorten the games because we're asking them to play more games. What's going to have a higher chance of injury? The 5th hit of the season that you take in the 3rd game, or, the 18th hit you take in the, but I'm saying, like, hits in the 3rd game and hits in the 16th game. The 16th game is going to have more of an impact whether you played a couple fewer plays overall in the course of the season anyway. It's not for player safety. It's not going to change anything. Having to play these games week in and week out and continue practicing and training and being ready to play in the games is going to lead to more injuries overall. And you see it every year now when we get to the playoff. How many of these teams are full strength?
Without seeing, data on it, I think what Tom says intuitively makes sense. At the very least, this is the power brokers in the sport trying to demonstrate that they understand that there is a safety issue and that they are, taking steps to proactively make the game, safer, quote unquote. I mean, this is something, hey, like, did you guys know about this? Did you do anything about it? Yes, we did. Yes, we did. So that's kind of, I think, the main motivation for this. I mean, there's a lot of implications if all of these rules are passed. I mean,
do we want to jump right to that? Can we have like an honest conversation? Because I think the incomplete pass thing is out the window.
Agreed.
I don't think like what's it? Is it over?
It's 3 dumbass rules in one rule they plan to implement.
It's a plant.
Yes.
Yeah. But I will say, like, the back-to-back timeouts freezing the kicker, fine, get rid of it. Who cares? That is annoying. I hate when coaches do that. I don't know. Is there any data that actually proves it's effective? I don't know.
No, it's proven it's not. It does not impact it.
Yeah. So I feel like the one rule they want to get rid of is the stopping after first downs until the final 2 minutes. That's the only rule they're trying to push through. I feel like the other ones are just there to kind of be like, okay, well, no, we can't have this. Well, okay, how about we compromise and just have this?
Yeah, it's what I do with my children.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give you like a bad option. I know you don't want, but it's what you want to have 4 options. So look, here's a couple that I know you're not going to pick, so we can get you to go with what's going to be getting us to bedtime.
Exactly. Last night I was like, hey, it's bath time. You want to do this the fun way or the not fun way? And he's like, the not fun way. I'm like, all right, take your shirt off right now. Get in the bath. It's just, yeah. All right. So do we want to talk about what a disaster it would be to implement all 4 of these at the same time real quickly?
Quickly, because I truly would be surprised if we get all 4 of them in at once. And I think we have already, didn't we say on the air this is already terrible for Brian Ferentz? Because if all of the rules get passed, then Iowa's only going to have 27 plays per game on offense, and I don't know if they're going to be getting a point per play with that offense.
I think if you actually had all these rules, if all of them passed and were implemented together, I think you would have a reduction in college football scoring of 30%. Right? I mean, it would be significant. You would have a lot of games that are played at that like 21-17 final score because you would, like, you have fewer plays, fewer opportunities to score. You would also have far fewer comebacks, and you would have more upsets at the same time. So with the clock running as fast as it's going to run, and it obviously like 1 second, still 1 second, but as not as fast as it's going to run, as often as it would run with these proposals, the number of comebacks would be limited because you just can't pull these comebacks off if you're not getting the clock to stop for incomplete passes. And you would also have a lot more upsets because when you have the better team start slowly, it's going to have a harder time coming back as well. And look at basically any small sample thing. This is creating a bigger sample sport and making it into a smaller sample sport within a single game setting because you're going to go from, probably 65, 68 plays to like 45 if they're all together.
Also, isn't there a real chance that if you did implement these rules, it would just lead to more up-tempo offenses, which would then lead to more of what Dennis called the exposures when we were playing those clips? Because it's going to, there are teams that it's just going to be the more plays that are run, the better our odds of winning the game. And that will just become a strategy again.
And the mental side of the clock running and these 330-pound linemen having to hustle back into position and trying to get going, go. I agree with you. It would create a chaotic scene, which who knows, like maybe that's a good television product, but it is not at all, in my eyes, conducive to player safety. I have a competitive reason why I hate the clock stops on incomplete pass, because if you are trying to nurse a lead, there is strategy involved with your play calling that I enjoy. I enjoy the coaching aspect, trying to figure out what are going to be the plays. We always say your 4-minute offense, your 2-minute offense, your selection of how you handle your play calling would change if there was no longer that penalty of the incomplete pass.
But it could make it better for air raid teams to protect leads.
Well, right. So here's the thing. Your chance of converting via running is not all that great. Running is not as efficient as passing is. If all of a sudden incomplete passes also stop the clock, you're going to see teams basically
also keep the clock running.
Excuse me. Yes. Let me restate this. If all of a sudden incomplete passes keep the clock running, teams with the lead are going to have tremendously more success, not just because they can bleed the clock, but because there's no real downside to throwing the football, which is more efficient than running the football. So they're going to convert at a much higher rate. We are so often, as Chip noted, forced to see the decision between do we run the clock, or do we pass it, which is a higher chance of conversion, but also the downside risk of potentially stopping the clock. If you remove that downside risk, like I said earlier, upsets are going to be reduced by a lot, guys, or especially, comebacks are going to be reduced by a lot. Upsets will probably go up quite a bit.
Also, what's the rule at now, too? Because with first downs, the clock only stops until the ball is placed on some of them, but then it's what is the last few minutes where they stop it all together until the snap? Is that like 4 minutes now? No, I'm saying the proposal is 2 minutes. What is it now? Is it the last 4 minutes? I can't remember.
Where it continues to run?
Yeah, because the clock does run after first downs for a lot of the
once it is spotted, which is what they're suggesting for the incomplete pass.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Which is again, all right. So if we are to remove the incomplete pass and look at, as we mentioned, the one rule that they're really trying to get through here, and if you've got ice in the kicker, I'm cool. That's a waste of our time. Let's get that out of here. That seems like common sense to me. And the untimed down, I reached into my cluttered brain and I was trying to remember. There have been some games that have maybe not the result, but the spread, the result at the pay window has swung on some untimed downs that I remember always gets a good look and gets everybody riled up on a Saturday. But for the most part, I'm okay. That's fine. What changes about college football, if any? I mean, outside of the number of plays being reduced, if we move to more of an NFL model of the clock?
I don't know. It's just the games will get shorter, which is the goal. Because another thing too, we talk about it with the television windows. What's the most attractive thing about the Pac-12 right now? It's the late window. Networks are trying to fill from noon until 2 a.m. every Saturday with football because it gets ratings, it does well. But they also want to make sure they could fit all those games into those windows. So that's what we see with the NFL, the way the NFL staggers its start times with noon, and then it has like 3:20, or I'm sorry, I'm Central, 1, and then 4:25 start times, and then like the 7:25, 7:30 primetime game, because they've got it down to such a science with the way they do their commercial breaks and with the rules. They know that a game, unless it goes to overtime, is probably going to fit in these roles. So I think that is one way you'd see it, where it become more predictable. But while some games go forever, I don't really have a problem with games lasting a long time when they're entertaining. It's the boring games that take forever that are annoying. So as far as that's concerned, that would maybe be possible. As far as be more like the NFL. As far as gameplay, if there are fewer plays in a game, strategically, will that lead to more chances or fewer chances? Will that lead to more extravagant offenses or more vanilla offenses? I don't know. It's hard to really know which direction things would go in that way.
I think it would. I think you're running the triple option becomes less attractive, right?
Yeah.
In terms of holding the football and trying to play keep away, because now everybody can play keep away if you had the pass incomplete thing. If it's just the clock stops,
let's throw out the passing.
Okay.
Let's try to operate with the idea that they are able to get this rule change through. It is approved, and we move to a more NFL similar model with the way the clock runs after first downs.
Are we going to have a 2-minute warning?
No, but the clock does stop.
Throw another, so they can throw another break in there. So they can throw another commercial break in there for us.
See, for me, it's a coaching thing. Like, this becomes a clock management situation, because we could see as many comebacks. We see crazy comebacks in the NFL. We could see maybe as many upsets, though I understand the math argument that variability is one thing. High variance, variance with the increase of plays is going to allow for an upset to occur. So there is that pesky math that gets in the way of that. But I think that in terms of comebacks and upsets and competition, I don't see much of a change from the college football that exists today. However, an immense amount of responsibility on the coaching staff with the preparation process and what happens on a game day, that you don't blow those timeouts in the third quarter. That way that you manage this thing all the way through is going to be much more important, since you no longer have that, that friendly extra clock stoppage that is just getting a first down.
It really specifically changes the math for your game management between minutes 12 and 2 in the fourth quarter, right? When you are deciding, do I punt this ball? Do I go for it? How do I handle this third down that I may need to try to go for, or may need to try to dump it down and set up a manageable fourth down? Your kick, punt, go situations and determinations are going to be changed by this, because you have to figure out, can I play 2 for 1 here? I need to rerun my math to figure out how many stops I can get. How many first downs can I actually allow, right? I need to take an additional, 10 seconds off per each first down allowed, because the clock is going to continue to run as opposed to stop, to allow the chains to reset in that sort of final window. Now, once you get past 2 minutes, there's really no difference, because the clock stops on the first down for reset, just like it does in the normal game. But I think, the early part of the fourth quarter, this is where I think it hurts comebacks, because not one score comebacks, but multi-score comebacks, some of the crazy comebacks that we see in college football, those just become a little bit less likely. But I agree with Chip and with Tom. It's not a huge deal. I mean, if we're lopping off 7 plays, that's 7 plays total, not 7 plays per team.
Mm-hmm.
That's like somewhere between like an 8 to 12% reduction in plays, in scoring, etc. That's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah, it's maybe a possession.
Yeah.
Though 7 plays add up a little bit, in that in the transfer portal era, you want to try to get your backups some reps to keep them happy. Sometimes you want to, not get them reps so they don't get to showcase their wares and hit the portal elsewhere, right? If they have no game tape, whatever, but they still have access to their practice tape. So usually they can just show that if they're actually a good player. Do you have to strategize differently now to try to, how do you do load management? Are your starters more important compared to your depth in a scenario in which you don't have to play 70 plays a game? You're playing more like 60. Those are considerations. College rosters are much bigger than NFL rosters.
So do you think, going off of that and spinning it forward, do you think that there's a chance that with now the expanded playoff, which means, and we're going to see conferences like the SEC probably moving to 9 conference games once they expand to 16. You've got to play more games. Do you think this is going to lead to, and especially now that there's more at-large berths for playoff spots, we're going to see a lot more FCS games than we have in recent years? Or do you think like the television networks will push back against having those games played, and because it doesn't make for great ratings?
I don't know about a lot more, but I think that the chance that we go to 0 FCS games or eliminate that is probably likely. That we that we don't end up playing fewer than we already do, because I mean, look, like Kentucky or Mississippi State is definitely going to want to keep that one FCS game if you expand this, right? And it allows you to play more of your backups, rest more of your starters, etc. I don't know. I think there's some other stuff you could do though too to this. I don't know if we want to get there yet, but like I have a few other ideas that I think
add buys.
We can add buys.
All right, hey, let's put a pin in that. All right.
All right. Yeah.
Coming up on the other side, if the rule change committee's getting together, why don't we offer some suggestions while they're just here? Slide something across the table, see if we can make college football better. Plus, some of your rule-related questions and more. Next.
There's something coming.
Let's face it together. Engage. Your crew are a part of you. They lift you up to accomplish the things you never could do alone. Together, you are never without hope.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast again, the NCAA Football Rules Committee considering proposals, all of which will include, for the most part, shortening games. They include the keeping the clock running after a first down, except in the final 2 minutes of the half, potentially even keeping the clock running after an incomplete pass, at least once the official has spotted the ball, plus eliminating the icing of kicker, consecutive timeouts in a kicking situation, as well as the untimed down after a defensive penalty at the end of a half. So, Bud, you said you had some other ideas. So let's hear it.
Yeah. So one that I think would make the networks probably pretty happy and would shave off an additional 7 plays per game, but also not tick off the fans, I think, is not showing the extra point or just allowing the extra point to be automatic, right? Think about it. Like, I know college kickers do crazy stuff. It's the most boring play in sports, especially when you kick it from where you kick it right now compared to like the NFL, which moved it back. All right. Extra point is automatic. It's kind of like in softball. If you hit the home run, you touch first base, you turn back, you go to the dugout. After a touchdown is scored and confirmed, you can either go right to commercial break and still kick the thing if you want. If they happen to miss it, show it when you come out of break. Cool, whatever. You can leave it up to the network if you felt like it, because if it's a really like crucial extra point late in the game, maybe they decide to stick around and show it. Maybe you run a commercial, vertically, like look at us on the show right now. We could easily have the extra point over Chip's head and just show Tom and I's beautiful faces, as commercials, right?
CBS Eye on the course.
Yeah, like there are some plays in college football that you could eliminate or decide to run commercials over to keep the networks happy, not take away from the fan experience. And also the commercial break would feel shorter if you went to an automatic extra point. Right? It's less standing around and BS. And then maybe we'll even tolerate a longer commercial break between scores if you didn't also run the commercial break after the kickoff. And that makes games longer as well. Because so often we get touchdown, extra point, TV timeout, kickoff, TV timeout, next drive. Let's just go longer TV timeout after a touchdown. I don't care about seeing the extra point. And then we'll go right into the next drive post kickoff.
I'm cool with side-by-side extra point, but I don't want to get rid of it altogether.
Anyone want to guess what the extra point percentage was in college football last season?
89%.
I bet you it's like in the 90s.
But
I don't know. Bud, you seen some important missed extra points.
I have. I saw one in the Superdome. Yeah.
97.9%.
See, it's pretty automatic, right? Like it's really a chip shot.
What about we get rid of some of these damn reviews? That would cut a lot of time out of the game when you need to take 5 minutes to rule if it was targeting or not. There's no way to know.
What if we just say there's no such thing as targeting?
All right, so that was actually a question from Lanky. Why not review the targeting rules?
Because they don't want to, because then they're going back on their own idea that we care about player safety. So if you start going back on the rules that you've changed to care about player safety, you're backtracking, and they can't afford to look that way.
By the way, yeah, I mean the targeting stuff's all theater anyway, right? I really don't think it's changing player behavior for the most part, except like you're creating other injuries. This whole skipping the extra point thing is not unprecedented, by the way. Baseball used to make you throw all 4 pitches to do the intentional walk, and it was really boring. And it wasn't automatic, but it was pretty damn close to automatic. It's about 98.3% of the time you'd execute it right. Like you generally didn't throw a wild pitch. You didn't accidentally throw a strike or hit the guy. And it was just, it's not a fun experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Nobody misses it.
Nobody misses it. Who's
so
missing?
Tom, do you want to get rid of extra point?
I don't want to get rid of it, no, but I think you could easily do it in a broadcast where you could just do a commercial while they're kicking it. And then, if something happens, it's blocked, it's returned. Okay, you go back to a full screen and you watch the play, and then there's replays. It's not that big of a deal. But I don't think spiritually, I don't want to get rid of it, although I do think mathematically you could. Or how about we get rid of the extra point as a option instead of just making it automatic? You got to go for 2 every time.
Would you push it back like the NFL does?
Would I what?
Would you push back the extra point?
If I was going to keep it around, like,
yeah.
It's just boring. And it does take up time. I mean, that's an additional couple minutes on the broadcast.
Got to get everybody out there. Got to get everyone lined up.
Everybody set. Yeah.
Interesting, kind of off the wall, but tangentially related question from the live chat from Robert. When I initially started this, I thought it was about rule changes, and then I realized it's an incredibly personal question. So I need you to consider this, because this is really about our self-confidence. If put into a Power 5 game, which do you feel the most confident that you could do? Number 1, complete a pass of at least 5 yards. And again, this is in competition in a Power 5 game. Number 2, carry the ball for at least 1 yard. Number 3, catch a pass beyond the line of scrimmage. Or number 4, kick an extra point, a PAT.
Do I get to warm up?
Oh, you can say throw?
No, but do I get to? No, if I get to warm up and get ready before the game, 4, kick the extra point. I already know I could do that. If I don't get a chance to warm up, Danny's not here. I'll say completing a pass would be the easiest one of those other 3 options.
My pass is getting batted down at the line of scrimmage, no doubt. Catching a pass, I do not trust myself.
No, I'm not getting open. Yeah.
Kick a PAT, I kind of feel like that one might get blocked as well. So as long as I can have 2 weeks in an ice bath or cryogenic chamber, give me the rock. I'll run for 1 yard and then get crushed.
Yeah, I do think, because for the most part, like yards or runs between 1 and 3 yards, as long as it's not like goal line situations or short yardage situations, are primarily determined by what the line does. I think that's my number 1 choice, especially because if they saw me in there, be like, okay, like that guy, they're not going to hand him the ball, right? Like he's in there for pass pro, and then, on a little draw or something, maybe you pop it. Number 2 is definitely catch the pass, because they wouldn't cover me and I'd be wide open, and I'm fairly confident I can catch the ball. Number 3.
But then you're getting crushed at high speed. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah.
If you're wide open, then here comes that heat-seeking weak side linebacker.
Yeah,
if I'm covered by anybody, I am not getting open against any.
No, I'm not shaking. I'm not shaking anybody. I really am not very good at kicking. I've done some field goal stuff, like not in the game, but just screwing around on the field at various camps. That's a little harder than people think it is if you didn't play like soccer or something. So I'm not going to pick that. Completing a pass is not easy, but 5 yards doesn't say you have to throw it beyond the line of scrimmage, right? It has to go for 5 yards. So maybe that's my 3.
All right. Love that question. Thank you for that, Robert.
I think no, but Danny's not here. I think we can all agree playing quarterback is the easiest position in football because they can't touch you. You know, it's all about whether your offensive line gives you time, and then you could find in a wide open guy when you get 20 minutes to look for one. Come on.
Yeah, I mean it is the easiest if you have the physical tools. I've got enough, confidence in myself to admit that my pass is getting batted down at the line of scrimmage.
I really want to see Chip get a carry now.
I'll tell you what, after playing golf with the guy on Monday, if the question was like, what do you want people doing, like hit the drive, approach, chip, or putt, I want Danny putting for me. That guy made 3 eagles and about 200 feet of putts in that tournament on Monday. That was
That's
holy cow.
Because I mean, he's got all that time to practice because of the easy quarterback lifestyle.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. If you want to be a great putter, be a backup quarterback in the NFL for like 15 years. Couple years starting, got to boost the pension up, and then be ready. Not too ready.
Let's go one more from the live chat. This one comes from Andrew. A little bit not rules related here. What is your favorite quarterback offensive coordinator combo for 2023? Maybe it's one that is still going to be around. I guess Lincoln calls himself the offensive coordinator, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you could say Lincoln and Caleb. Sure. You could point to the Grubb and Penix up at Washington. You maybe like one of the newer additions, one of the coaching change related moves, as of course you've got Lil Riley, Garrett Riley is showing up, and he's got Cade Klubnik at Clemson. What stands out?
I mean, I think it's anytime you have a really experienced quarterback who the OC doesn't have to spend a ton of time with like fundamentals and basics of the offense, then they can get in the lab and cook on some really creative stuff that you probably just wouldn't have time to rep in practice if you had to go over the basics all the time. And Chip just took most of my list. So like that I had off the top of my head. And those are really good ones. Like I love the Grubb one. I mean, that's who Saban wanted, obviously, at Bama, before they hired Tommy Rees. I'll also throw in Alex Atkins and Jordan Travis. I mean, the guys, this will be his 6th year of college football, really athletic, and they just run so many, they run a lot of stuff. And it's as far as formations and little tags they have on stuff. And they run a lot of stuff I don't think you could run with an inexperienced guy. So I'll throw that one in there.
Cade McNamara and Brian Ferentz.
Oh, yes.
Let's do it. No, the real answer
would best. No, we didn't say best. We said favorite. That is a fair answer for favorite.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see. That is 100% for sure. But I do think, Penix and Grubb in Washington, Lincoln and Caleb. God, who else?
I will say, Gabriel Levy is going to be year 4 together, I think, going back to their time at UCF. Mm-hmm. So I'll be interested to see what they cook up.
Yeah. I mean, this is a hard question to answer. Barry Lunny and Luke Altmaier.
Sark and Arch, or Sark and you?
Sark and
Sarch.
Sarch.
Their Hollywood couple name is Sarch. So when Arch gets his first career start in mid-October, we can all talk about Sarch as our favorite QB OC combo.
Jimbo and Petrino.
That will be interesting.
Yeah, both of them, and then whoever A&M's quarterback is. Who is A&M's quarterback next year? Is it Wegman?
Yes.
Okay. Short round in the comment. Gus Malzahn and a cornerback.
They actually have a dude there that I'm pretty excited to watch, by the way. And now I'm forgetting what the hell the kid's name is. We had him at Elite 11 in Orlando, and this is kind of some deep cut stuff, but it's, late February, right? And he's a kid that Georgia and Florida and Florida State wanted as a running back. So he's that level of athlete, but he really was stuck on playing quarterback. And I don't think he's going to be an NFL quarterback, but in Gus's system, yes, Castellanos. Yeah, I will say this kid, legs wise, has some real juice. So I think Big 12 fans be ready to be annoyed. I think like he really has something to him.
A lot of third downs where your defense isn't coming off the field because that kid just scrambled and made something happen.
Well, yeah, it was like we saw it because there was Mikey Keene in street clothes, John Rice Plumlee knocked out of the game, and now all of a sudden here comes this very much a Gus Malzahn quarterback for sure.
Will Stein and Bo Nix will be interesting. I know we're mostly focused on like existing OC QB combos, but that'll be fun.
So, all right, Will Stein, the new Oregon offensive coordinator after Dillingham left. And was that, I don't have it on top of my, is that internal promotion?
No, he was at UTSA, wasn't he?
Ah.
Yeah. It's like the second year in a row UTSA's lost its offensive coordinator.
Yeah. Producer Jordan, Tanner Mordecai, and Phil Longo. Definitely.
That will definitely, I mean, Wisconsin's offense, period, is going to be very interesting to follow next year.
Sean Lewis and Shadur Sanders. Lanky in the chat.
Yeah.
That'll be something.
Milton and Milton and Hazel.
Tennessee's going to start next year. Nobody cares about Tennessee.
All right. Coming up on the other side, we open up the big old bag of mail. We still got some live audience listener questions to come, and please continue to drop them in the chat. And so remember that if you want to leave us a review, a 5-star review, put your question in there. We can throw it in a future mailbag episode. So into the big old bag of mail. Next.
What are your thoughts for the future?
I helped build the most magical place in the world.
What do you say we come in for my close-up now?
I always wanted to be part of something bigger.
I made it on my terms, not theirs.
Here's the twist.
Whoa! I'm in so much trouble, Mandy.
It's over.
You have no idea what's next.
We are going to be more than they ever bargained for.
Babylon, rated R, now streaming on Paramount Plus.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. We appreciate everybody who has come in to hang out, and a reminder that we're going to be doing this throughout the off season. Mailbag episodes or even regular episodes that aren't mailbag episodes, come and hang out with us live, youtube.com/cover3. Throw in a question. We'll try to find a way to get it on into the show. All right. This next question comes from James. I'm in a college football fantasy league, and I'm hoping to finally hoist the championship trophy in 2023. Never too early to start prepping. Plus, to the detriment of my rivals, I'm the only one who subscribes and listens to the show. Well, James, change that, at least before the season starts. Like, get all the information you need now, finish your draft, and then, thanks to us, get every one of them to subscribe to the show. James asks, what camp position battles should I keep an eye on throughout the offseason? Ohio State and Alabama are obvious, but what under-the-radar position battles could lead to late-round league winners? For example, is Texas Tech wide receiver room poised for a monster year? Seems like a perfect storm with Kitley in year 2, an improved QB room, and new Big 12 league members. For your information, my league is Power 5 plus Notre Dame only. Thanks, James in Houston. And as I passed this along, I noted that it was a college fantasy question where they're looking at quarterback, running back, wide receivers, and tight ends. But if you've got an offensive line battle that you think is really important or has been on your mind recently, or anything on the defensive side of the ball, I figured we could address that here as well. So an under-the-radar position battle that has your attention this offseason.
UCLA quarterback. Right? So you bring in 5-star Dante Moore, who I think believes he will have the chance to start immediately. You also bring in Kent State transfer Colin Schlee, who, when healthy, was very productive for the Golden Flashes last year. I'm confident UCLA will have not a major drop-off in quarterback play from Dorian Thompson-Robinson, but I'm not particularly confident in naming the starter at this point. But that offense, I think, will hum. And that, if you're in a college fantasy league, is definitely one you need to watch.
Yeah, I'm going to stick on the West Coast. Like, if you look at Washington, they've got pretty much everybody back. Like, Penix is back, Dunze's back. There's a lot of guys that are probably not. I don't know how. Like he said, he's the only one who listens to this show in his league, so I don't know how deep their knowledge is on the Pac-12. Considering nobody seems to care about the Pac-12, we do. So I would very much. I think, yeah, UCLA, Washington. If I'm you, I'm probably drafting a whole lot of Pac-12 players this year who don't play for USC because you're going to get the same kind of production, but not as you won't have to pay as high of a price for them.
Texas Tech, Tyler Shuck, I assume is QB1, but I don't know if I should assume that. Baron Morton also is a guy I know that they like an awful lot. Shuck's been hurt. Morton also got dinged up a little bit. Whomever wins that job is going to put up a ton of yards and points. And from a fantasy football perspective, college-wise, that's one you definitely need to be taking some shots at and to be monitoring closely, depending on when you draft.
Another one, too, we just kind of talked about it a little bit. The perception of Wisconsin with Longo and all them coming in and the quarterbacks is, air raid. I think it's going to do wonders for Braylon Allen. I think Braylon Allen is going to have more room to roam than he's ever had. And he's already got the size, but he's quite fast, too, once he gets in the open field. So there's probably going to be more lanes for him than there have been in recent years for teams for just putting 8-9 guys in the box. I think he's poised to have a monster season.
I've mentioned it on the show before, but it tickled me deeply that Braylon Allen hopped on Twitter and said, shout out to not facing 8 and 9 man boxes.
Yeah.
The man knows exactly what's coming. We lose Quentin Johnston. We lose Darius Davis. Obviously, we lose Max Duggan. We assume Chandler Morris probably is going to be the starting quarterback, but the wide receiver battle at TCU, very interesting. You do have Savion Williams back for a senior season, I believe. But you've got some transfers coming in as well, and you've got a lot of reps that are open. So if you're looking for, especially, I thought about them from the fantasy perspective, someone's going to emerge as the new alpha there. There are touches and there are receptions to go around that are going to lead to being able to go and win your league. So you mentioned, James, Texas Tech as one that stood out to you. It is actually over in Fort Worth, where I was like, that's under the radar, because that's the loss of Darius Davis and Quentin Johnston certainly puts a lot up for grabs among those TCU wide receivers, and some interesting options, though not one specifically where I'm ready to be like, that is going to be the star.
The Bama quarterback battle between Ty Simpson and Jalen Milroe also will have implications for Bama's backfield in terms of carry share and for Bama's receivers, right? If you're betting on a bounce back for Bama's receivers, you probably want Ty Simpson to win the job, because his athletic profile suggests that he will throw the ball not necessarily better, but more frequently. If you look at the game in which Jalen Milroe played in full against Texas A&M, he only had 111 passing yards. He's a really big dude who has some real juice with his legs. My guess is that they would run him an awful lot, and that will also impact how many carries Bama's number 1 and number 2 backs get, because if he's taking 100 plus carries on the year, then that's carries that are not going to some of those Bama backs. And for college fantasy purposes, that's going to matter. It will also likely impact your touchdown share. So keep in mind that the winner of some of these quarterback battles stylistically also impacts other positions.
That's a really good point. Having Tommy Rees as offensive coordinator has me thinking that's probably Ty Simpson.
I think so, but they also were not afraid to run the quarterback in the latter half of last year. So I guess it just depends on. I think it's Ty Simpson too. I mean, I'm not trying to just have fake debate on the show. I think it's one thing we do a nice job of avoiding, but I don't know that it's Ty Simpson. I think it is.
Oh, he could certainly he could play his way into not getting the job. Mm-hmm. That's one thing. Like, we always have to entertain that these are not certainties. These are not robots. These are 18 to 22-year-old people. And if they stink, they're not going to get the QB1 job, especially at a place like Alabama. I think Jalen Milroe is probably your known quantity, and that's why he was trusted to go take over for Bryce Young last year, not Ty Simpson. But if you get Ty Simpson in there, you know what that leads to, Bud? That leads to more carries for your running backs as opposed to carries for your quarterback, and probably more receptions for your wide receivers in that Alabama wide receiver room. As when Milroe was in there, that was a run first, run second, run third, and throw the ball kind of offense, at least in the Arkansas game and the Texas A&M game. So certainly notable there. What about at Ohio State? We didn't mention Ryan Day and Kyle McCord as a good OC quarterback combo, but you got all the tools that you could ever imagine with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka back for yet another season.
Yeah, don't you mean Brian Hartline as the offensive coordinator?
Brian Hartline, that's right.
I would have to assume Kyle McCord's probably going to put up numbers just as the Ohio State quarterback, and maybe in your draft, because he's not CJ Stroud, because he's not Justin Fields, and he doesn't have that kind of name recognition, you can get him at a pretty decent spot. So I would definitely, if I'm playing college fantasy, keep that in mind. But as far as other guys, like Marvin Harrison's back, Emeka Egbuka's back, Trevion Henderson's back. But as for guys that aren't already starters who I think could emerge and you might want to make, I guess, I don't know. I don't play college fantasy. So do you have value picks that you stash on your bench? I don't know. But we saw flashes from Dallin Hayden last year. Trevion Henderson was banged up at times last season. He's a running back. There's a very good chance he's going to be banged up at some point again this season. Dallin Hayden is a guy who I think is very, very talented, could step in and have a big role. And also another freshman receiver, because it's Ohio State, so they have to have a stud freshman receiver. Brandon Inniss is somebody I would keep an eye on.
Yeah, Ennis is extremely polished. I mean, probably the most polished receiver in the class. Very competitive, a guy who dominated the 7-on-7 circuit for a long time. As far as physical upside, I think he is not the biggest physical upside, but he's not a bad athlete. I mean, the guy's a damn good athlete. He's more college ready than some other receivers. So I think that'll allow him to see the field, early. I'm actually pretty interested in Georgia and specifically what the Mike Bobo move does to this. So when you have Carson Beck, you have Brock Vandegrift, and then you also have Gunnar Stockton. I mean, all guys who had nice high school careers, who have multiple years now in the system. I would not rule out Stockton at Georgia. If I'm drafting early before spring practice starts, I'm probably taking some late shares of Gunnar Stockton to see if he can win that job. I have a feeling that he'll have a pretty good chance there.
And I don't want to undercut the good call, or at least like the insight there, but how much can you expect from how much can you expect from a Georgia quarterback in the Mike Bobo offense? This
is fair. I mean, like, Georgia is not a team that chucks it around a whole lot. So from a college fantasy perspective, although he said his league was Power 5 plus Notre Dame only. I mean, that's like 60. How many Power 5 teams now with the addition
65
of
or 66?
65.
It's got to be more than that because you have 4 new Big 12 teams.
Oh, that's right. Oh, man.
So we're at 69 now? Nice. I mean, if I have 69 choices,
nice.
I'm probably not picking Georgia's quarterback for a college fantasy team. Although he probably will throw a number of touchdowns.
That's the thing, too. It's like, how deep is your league and how deep are your rosters?
I would take the Georgia quarterback. You just say the Georgia quarterback. I would not let 30 quarterbacks go before I took the Georgia quarterback. I might have 10 quarterbacks that I pick above them. I might have 15, but they're not going to turn the ball over. They probably are going to get a lot of touchdowns. Life is going to be somewhat easy. You are going to be put in advantageous positions to be successful. And so, yeah, I think that Gunnar Stockton's an interesting call there, but if I were doing a fantasy stat stuffing perspective, I think that I would probably go get a team that's going to go 8-4 and maybe has more reason to throw the dang ball in the fourth quarter rather than just running it out or riding the pine.
Yeah, exactly. So like Craig Lawson in the chat says, Bobo coached Aaron Murray. TF are y'all talking about? Here's what I am talking about. Where did Georgia rank last year in passing yards per game? Any idea?
83rd.
I probably should pull this up. I'm very close to having it. All right. Georgia passing yards per game was 15th. All right. Not bad. You had a guy that made it to New York. Do we think they're going to throw the ball more or less with the new quarterback? I don't know. I mean, they seem to trust Stetson an awful lot. They also had to throw the ball more in certain games, like playoff games and SC championship games, than they do normally. So I think if you take out their throwing performance in the playoffs, right? If we can go game log here, exactly right. Against LSU, 275. Against Ohio State, 398. Against TCU, 335. Their regular season average, which I assume this guy's college fantasy team does not include playoff games because that would be weird. Georgia is probably more like 25th. So there's definitely more offenses I'd rather have quarterbacks from than Georgia for college fantasy purposes.
Yeah. And again, I'm going to say that part of me saying I want to take a 7-5 quarterback is just the principle that, you are going to have more positions where you are throwing the ball for an entire 25% of the game, the fourth quarter, and you are going to be in the game trying to help your team win as opposed to potentially being on the bench or handing the ball off. I just think there's going to be more looks because, as we have talked about, from the moment that Georgia was up $500 million in the national championship game, we were already looking at the 2023 schedule and talking about a three-peat. We had not even dropped confetti in that big spaceship called SoFi Stadium, and everybody was already talking about a three-peat. So I think that the competitiveness of Georgia's season, which I say out of respect to Georgia's roster and what Kirby Smart has built, is not going to lead to very competitive games and therefore less opportunities to light it up through the air.
And their schedule this year is a joke, right? I mean, like it is far easier than schedules they've had in the past. There's no Clemson to open the year in the non-conference like they had 2 years ago. It's a cakewalk. So there's also a pretty good chance, because none of these guys have proven, that Georgia plays multiple guys in the early game. So you're not getting great individual quarterback numbers there.
All right, one last one before we get out of here. This is if you hang with us for a while, you know about the Lindsey Buckingham questions. This is definitely a Lindsey Buckingham question from Logan. I love the pod, listening since the Barton days. Do any of you play NCAA football? What are you looking forward to the most about its return? And who should be on the cover?
Yeah, I played it. It's not coming out this year, it'll be coming out next year, correct?
Correct.
So for now, I would say Caleb Williams, just because he won the Heisman, he would be the most likely to be on the cover. But who wins the Heisman next year? I don't know. Maybe it's Caleb Williams again. What am I most looking forward to about the game? Playing it.
Yeah. Transfer portal.
Yeah.
I think will be pretty interesting. How do they incorporate the transfer portal? Like, what kind of promises do you have to make to your own kids, and then try to tamper with kids on other rosters? And I just think all the new stuff in the sport will be pretty interesting. How much are these schools going to let EA put in there as far as reality?
Yeah, no, I'm guessing the big addition will be the transfer portal. And they had transfers in the later versions of the game where all of a sudden it would just show up at the end of the season, be like, this guy wants to transfer to your team. You're Kent State and you just came, in your second season, but this 5-star from Alabama suddenly wants to play for you. So yeah, I think we'll probably see the transfer portal. I don't think we'll have NIL or any of that kind of stuff in there. I think we'll have the playoff. I think
we could have the players. I think they could get together a licensing agreement. That is an NIL deal. Like,
I expect there to be players, or at least
not fake
rosters.
Players. I don't think it's going to be Ron player. I think that we're going to have some name, image, and likeness of the current teams.
But even if they don't, it's not like there won't be somebody who does, and we can just download the rosters like you do in every other game right now. I mean, right now you could play NCAA 14 and download the current rosters. That exists.
I look forward to throwing the ball to the tight end, running the ball 75% of the time, and just keeping it, just grinding teams out, winning a lot of these 21-17 games that we talked about with my 3-minute or 5-minute quarters, just building up the dynasty 1 W at a time.
You only play 5-minute quarters, bud? What do you play?
7.
I'm at 6.
Okay.
I'm trying to get
what level of difficulty were you playing on?
All-American, the third one up, not Heisman, but the next one below Heisman.
Heisman was so hard.
Right.
Also, I played 7-minute quarters pre having 2 kids, so I don't really know that I would continue to play 7-minute quarters. I might play 5-minute quarters.
The other issue with because again, NCAA 14 was the last one to come out. I had it on Xbox 360, and the current state of my Xbox 360 is you can only play 1 game before the thing just starts like smoking. It sounds like a jet engine when you fire it up, and then at some point it just like shuts down. So just always save your work. You got to fire it up, play a game, it shuts off. Fire it up, do all your recruiting, it shuts off. Fire it up, play a game. And just sort of repeat that cycle to work your way through the season as Pip Chatterson II prepares to move from Washington to LSU.
Also, will we be in the game? Because like NBA 2K and those other franchises, they have people like, they have like the Twitter social media thing where they have like fake, NBA journalists like tweeting about players. They're going to do that for us?
I
Because
think it should.
I think they should, and I think that we should get a cut of the sales.
Oh yeah, I'm more than I've done voice work. I'm ready to do it, ready to go. I'm trying to get a little independent contractor money. I'm not afraid to claim that on my taxes. Proud to. Let's
So
go.
I'm gonna have to buy a PS5.
I don't. Were they only? I've got a PS4. I'm assuming that they'll still put it out on PS4. I don't know, but maybe it's got to be PS5 or.
I am very much
I had a
looking forward
PS3.
to it, though.
I didn't get
100%.
the 4. Yeah, it's gonna be so much fun, dude.
What's the best NCAA? Do you have any strong opinion on that one? I know the bad one. There was one where they flipped up the controls.
Oh yeah, what year was that?
06.
Yeah,
a little bit.
It was like last year of high school, right?
sure. Yeah, I was definitely
Yeah.
still in high school in 06.
What team did you always play with to make it like a crazy dynasty?
What?
Georgia State was a popular one. I did UMass a couple times. I mean, I would generally just pick the worst team and go from there.
I really like Colorado's uniforms with like the all the way pulled up white socks with the all black and the gold helmets. Like just from that looked pretty dope. And they ran all over Nebraska that one year. Who did that? It screwed somebody out of a BCS game. I remember they just it was. Remember the backs in that team? And this is obscure, but like was it Chris Brown and somebody? That's not right.
Was after Rashawn Salam. It was
definitely after Shalom. Yeah, Chris Brown, Colorado, and I remember just Nebraska just could not stop them.
It was on a Black Friday, right?
Yeah, so he's 41. I remember Chris Brown being big, and I was right. 6'3", 235 is he's from Naperville, Tom.
Hell yeah, it's my guy, Chris.
Look at that. Third round draft pick. So that would have been in, I don't know, probably 01 or 02. That a Big 12 offensive.
Yeah, I was still in high school then.
Yeah. Yeah. So I remember like in college, I would play as Colorado because like I had just seen that as my senior year of high school.
Started ECU.
Nice.
I mean, just come on. Let's go, Pirates. Got to start at ECU and then just sort of see where it goes from there. Always fun stuff. Again, if you would like to leave us a mailbag question, you can come and join us live, youtube.com/cover3, or you can go and leave us a 5-star review. And in that review, put your mailbag question. We'll add it to the big old bag of mail. You can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See y'all.